Stop wasting your life blaming other people for the reality you are refusing to change. There is a lie that destroys more lives than a lack of money, more dreams than missed opportunities, more futures than failure itself, more destinies than any external crisis. It is the lie that says what happened to you is the final reason you cannot rise. It is the lie that says because of your past, you are now destined to stay stuck. It is the lie that says your pain deserves to keep ruling your life. It is the lie that says if someone hurt you, then you now have the right to abandon yourself. It is the lie that says the suffering you went through is enough to justify the paralysis you are living in today. And that lie is extremely seductive because it relieves you, it comforts you, it protects your ego, it gives you a ready-made explanation. It keeps you from facing the burden of change. It creates an emotional space where you can keep telling yourself that the real problem is always somewhere outside of you. That is why so many people cling to it, because blaming is easier than rebuilding. Complaining is easier than disciplining yourself. Telling the story of your pain is easier than confronting your own patterns. Pointing at the past is easier than accepting the cost of creating anew. Present, deep down, many people do not really want transformation. They want justification. They do not want to break free from the old mindset. They just want an emotionally acceptable reason to stay where they are. They do not truly want growth. They want a story that lets them remain the same without feeling guilty, and maybe that sounds harsh. But hard truth saves more lives than comfortable lies. Because comfortable lies hold you gently, while they destroy your future in silence. They do not confront you. They do not wake you up. They do not move you forward. They simply rock you to sleep while you keep losing time, energy, focus, years, and opportunities. At some point, you are going to have to decide whether your pain will be your excuse or your turning point, whether what happened to you will keep serving as your justification or become your fuel, whether your past will remain a prison or become a school, whether the wounds that marked you will continue to be the dominant language of your life or simply become part of the story you outgrew. Because the truth is this: your parents may have failed you. Your childhood may have been chaotic. The way you were raised may have lacked warmth. You may have grown up hearing words that made you feel small. You may have been ignored. You may have been betrayed. You may have been manipulated. You may have been abandoned at the exact moment you needed support the most. You may have gone through a relationship that shattered your trust. You may be carrying deep emotional pain. You may have known rejection too early. You may have felt alone when you needed protection the most. All of that may be completely real. But if today you are still using yesterday as an excuse not to take control of your life, then pain is no longer the only problem. Now there is something else working against you, your own mindset. That is where self-sabotage begins to take root. It does not begin only when life wounds you. It begins when you start cooperating with the effects of that wound, when you turn pain into identity, when you begin speaking as if your past has more authority than your choices, when you stop asking, "What do I need to do now?" and start living in the question, "Whose fault is my situation this time?" That question weakens people. That question delays people. That question drains energy. That question numbs responsibility. That question turns potential into passivity. A person trapped in blame lives in emotional delay and practical delay. Always almost starting, almost changing, almost reacting, almost maturing, almost disciplining the mind, almost taking control, almost becoming who they could have been. But still stuck in almost, because deep down blaming other people is not just an emotional reaction. It is an unconscious protection strategy. If the blame stays outside of you, then you do not have to confront what is inside of you. If someone else remains the central cause of everything, then you do not have to face your procrastination. You do not have to face your lack of consistency. You do not have to admit your attachment to comfort. You do not have to recognize your emotional dependence on the old story. You do not have to correct the defeated language you keep repeating. You do not have to examine your habits. You do not have to raise your standards. You do not have to leave the comfortable position of being the person who always has a reason not to act, and that is destructive, because while you keep explaining your life, time keeps moving. While you keep rehearsing the language of pain, opportunities keep disappearing. While you protect your excuses, your reality stays the same. While you try to prove that your reasons are understandable, life does not stop and wait for you to be ready. And that is one of the hardest truths to accept. Life does not negotiate with your excuse. It does not stop because you suffered. It does not slow down because you were hurt. It does not lower its demands because your past was hard. It keeps moving. The days keep passing. The bills keep coming. Opportunities still demand preparation. The future still demands maturity. That is why sooner or later, a person has to decide either they keep serving the pain or they start serving their destiny. And that decision changes everything. The day someone says, no one is coming to rescue me, no one is going to build my future for me, no one is going to train my mind for me, no one is going to carry my discipline for me, no one is going to recover the years I am wasting, no one is going to interrupt my patterns if I keep feeding those patterns every day. That day is hard, but it is also liberating, because the same truth that takes away your excuses gives your power back, and power is exactly what many people have been avoiding. They say they want peace. They say they want prosperity. They say they want order. They say they want growth. They say they want emotional stability and abundance. But many times what they still want more is the comfort of not feeling responsible, and that comfort is expensive. It costs growth. It costs maturity. It costs inner strength. It costs self-respect. It costs time. It costs opportunities. It costs authority. It costs confidence. It costs clarity. It costs the future victimhood feels comforting in the beginning because it demands very little from you. It does not demand deep change. It does not demand inner government. It does not demand consistent discipline. It does not demand real correction. It only demands a story. A story you repeat, an explanation you protect, a narrative you keep alive to justify why you still have not changed. But what begins as emotional relief ends as silent imprisonment, because every identity produces behavior, and if you insist on seeing yourself as someone who is permanently broken, permanently blocked, permanently damaged, then your life will eventually adjust to that view. You will hesitate more, protect yourself too much, try less, hide more, trust yourself less, wait too long, delay more, accept less from life, expect less from yourself, and one day you will look at your reality and call it destiny, when in truth much of it was repetition. It was pattern. It was an uncorrected mindset. It was avoidance disguised as sensitivity. It was comfort disguised as trauma. It was fear disguised as caution. It was procrastination disguised as emotional processing. That is why self-responsibility is one of the most powerful mental shifts a human being can ever experience. It is not coldness. It is not denial. It is not pretending the pain was never real. It is not acting as if everything was your fault from the beginning. It is the decision to stop allowing pain to sit at the center of your identity. It is the moment when you say, what happened to me matters, but it will not continue ruling the rest of my life. What hurt me was real, but it will no longer be my excuse to keep abandoning myself. What I lost was painful, but continuing to lose years because of my own inaction is now my responsibility. That is the line between emotional childhood and mental maturity. Maturity begins when you stop demanding that the past release you before you choose to move. Because many times, healing does not come before movement. Many times, movement is what begins to produce healing. Many times, clarity does not come before action. Clarity is born when you finally act, but so many people are waiting to feel ready before they change. They want motivation before discipline. They want peace before responsibility. They want confidence before effort. They want a guarantee before obedience. They want to feel completely healed before they start. Living in a mature way, life does not work like that. The greatest transformations almost never begin in perfect conditions. They begin in the middle of confusion, in the middle of pain, in the middle of doubt, in the middle of no applause, in the middle of no validation, in the middle of imperfect days, in the middle of a mind that still needs to be trained. That is where real strength is born, not when everything becomes easy, but when excuses stop being treated like something sacred. The addiction to excuses. Many people do not realize they are addicted to excuses because they call it honesty. They say they are just being real. They say they are simply telling the truth about their story. They say they are just acknowledging their trauma. They say they are being realistic. They say they are only expressing what they felt. But there is a very clear line between acknowledging pain and building your entire life around it. There is a difference between understanding your story and becoming dependent on it. There is a difference between naming the wound and turning that wound into a throne. There is a difference between saying this hurt me and living as if that pain has permanent authority over your behavior, your decisions, your future, and your identity. A wound needs treatment, not worship. A scar should teach, not rule. A painful chapter should mature you, not imprison you. But many people, instead of treating the pain, begin protecting it. They become emotionally attached to their own suffering narrative. They begin to recognize themselves inside it. They begin introducing themselves through it. They begin interpreting everything through it and without. Realizing it, pain stops being something that happened in the past and becomes a kind of psychological center. From that point on, everything changes. They explain themselves through pain, justify themselves through pain, limit themselves through pain, hide behind pain, retreat because of pain, tolerate weak behavior because deep down there is always an old story ready to excuse it. And then they wonder why nothing moves forward. Nothing moves forward because they built a silent loyalty to their own weakness. This is one of the most sophisticated forms of self-sabotage because it does not look like self-sabotage. It looks like sensitivity. It looks like emotional depth. It looks like awareness. It looks like honesty. But in the end, the effect is the same. Delay, you say. You want a new life. But every day you rehearse the script of the old one. You say you want peace, but you are still feeding the thoughts of your wounded version. You say you want prosperity, but you keep protecting the patterns that keep you small because those patterns already feel familiar, and familiarity often speaks louder than desire. That is why so many people remain trapped in cycles they claim to hate, not because they love suffering, but because they have become used to the emotional structure of that suffering. Even chaos, when repeated long enough, can start to feel like home. Even scarcity can start to feel normal. Even disorder can start to feel like identity. Even self-pity can start to feel like honesty. So, do not underestimate how attached a person can become to what is destroying them. They complain about the pattern, but they protect the pattern. They say they want change, but reject the posture required to sustain it. They ask for new results, but keep the same reactions. They want peace, but refuse to let go of their addiction to explanation. They want prosperity, but remain loyal to the same mindset that keeps them in scarcity. A new life is not born from better excuses. It is born from deeper responsibility. And responsibility is not glamorous. It does not always bring applause. It does not shine like a beautiful speech. It is quieter than that, more serious, more practical. It looks at your habits and asks, where am I failing myself? It looks at your routine and asks, where is the disorder I keep tolerating? It looks at your speech and asks, why do I keep feeding a language of defeat? It looks at your delays and asks, how much of my stagnation is being sustained by my own behavior? It looks at your life and has the courage to admit something uncomfortable. Part of the pain I feel today is no longer being caused only by what happened to me, but by what I continue allowing within myself. That realization hurts, but it clears the fog. It cuts through illusion. It interrupts emotional performance. And from that point forward, the question changes. You stop saying only I am like this because of what happened to me, and you start asking, who am I becoming because of what I keep repeating? That question can wake someone up because your life is being shaped right now, not only by the events that hurt you, but by the thoughts you keep repeating, by the language you normalized, by the standards you tolerate, by the level of discipline you accept, by the decisions you keep postponing, by the behavior you keep feeding day after day. That is why two people can go through similar pain and end up in completely different places. One turns pain into permission to remain broken. The other turns pain into fuel to become strong. One uses the wound as a reason to hide. The other uses the same experience as a wake-up call. One becomes dependent on explanation. The other becomes committed to correction. The pain may have been similar. The posture was not. And posture changes destiny. The comfort hidden inside victimhood. Victimhood survives because it offers emotional rewards. Not rewards that build, not rewards that elevate, but rewards that numb. It offers sympathy. It offers understanding. It offers comfort without demand. It offers temporary relief from the pressure to act. It offers a socially acceptable explanation for staying stuck. It offers a narrative that sounds deep and often even earns approval. And for a while that feels good. It feels comforting to hear that your paralysis makes sense. It feels safe to stay in environments where no one confronts you. It feels pleasant to be surrounded by people who validate every excuse you make. It can even feel like love. But not every form of validation is love. Sometimes it is just sedation. What comforts you can also weaken you. What calms you can also numb you. What validates you can also imprison you. Too much validation without enough responsibility becomes psychological poison. Because then the goal is no longer to mature. The goal becomes protecting the wounded version of yourself. And that version does not want to be challenged. It wants to be accommodated. It wants to be spared. It wants to remain at the center. It wants to stay the main explanation for everything. That is why some people become angry when they are confronted with truth. Not because the truth is false, but because truth threatens the emotional structure they built around blame. If they let go of the excuse, they will have to face the time they wasted protecting it. If they release the narrative, they will have to admit how much they delayed their own healing. If they stop blaming other people, they will have to face the fact that they kept sabotaging themselves for much longer than they wanted to admit. So they resist. They remain in the story, not because it feels good, but because it feels familiar, socially understandable, and emotionally protective. But your future does not respond to your excuse. It responds to your pattern. It responds to your discipline. It responds to your consistency. It responds to what you repeatedly do, not to what you explain most emotionally. That is why life keeps humbling people who are addicted to explanation. They believe that recognizing the problem should be enough to produce change, but it is not understanding a pattern matters. Breaking a pattern is what transforms you. Talking about pain may be one step. Allowing it to govern the rest of your life is a choice. At some point, every real transformation demands an uncomfortable question. What has this pain been allowed to justify in me? That question is powerful because it reveals the secondary damage. Not only what was done to you, but what you started allowing in yourself afterward. Did you become more cynical, more passive, mentally lazy, undisciplined, reactive, comfortable in weakness, emotionally dependent, stuck in the past, addicted to starting and not finishing, inclined to hide whenever it is time to act? These behaviors may have been triggered by pain, but they are maintained by repetition. And repetition is exactly where responsibility returns to your hands. No one is coming to recover the years you are wasting. This is one of the hardest truths in life. No one is coming to give you back the years you are throwing away. No one is going to love you enough to replace your discipline. No one is going to advise you enough to compensate for your avoidance. No one is going to motivate you enough to defeat for you what you keep feeding against yourself. Support matters, help matters, advice matters, care matters, but none of it can execute for you. No mentor can build your habits in your place. No partner can think strong thoughts for you. No friend can decide your future for you. No beautiful words can replace your daily commitment. No prayer can replace a mind that refuses to cooperate with its own healing. Sooner or later, life becomes personal. You, your mind, your choices, your patterns, your routine, your language, your courage, your honesty, your willingness to stop performing pain and start building strength. That is why self-responsibility is so powerful. It dismantles the fantasy that change is waiting on perfect conditions. Many people say they are waiting to heal before they begin, but in practice they are waiting to be rescued. They are waiting for an ideal atmosphere. They are waiting for the pain to shrink on its own. They are waiting for someone else to organize internally what only they can organize. They are waiting for the day when everything feels comfortable enough to finally act. That day does not come. Tomorrow will still demand something from you. The day will still ask for order. Your mind will still need discipline. Your habits will still need correction. Your speech will still need guarding. The wrong influences will still need to be cut off. Your standards will still need to rise. That is why strong people stop asking, "Why did not anyone do this for me?" and start asking, "What do I need to correct today?" That question changes the atmosphere of life. It takes you out of the position of spectator and puts you in the position of builder. It takes you out of the courtroom of the past and places you on the battlefield of the present. It takes you out of explanation and into responsibility. And when that happens, something powerful begins to wake up, because now that person no longer depends on the perfect mood, no longer depends on everyone's approval, no longer depends on having the perfect excuse, no longer depends on feeling that everything has already been emotionally resolved. They begin where they are, with what they have, using what remains, rebuilding what needs to be rebuilt, even from ruins if necessary. That is how real comebacks happen, not by waiting for the past to explain itself, not by waiting for life to apologize, not by waiting for perfect justice, but by deciding that the future deserves more loyalty than pain. Your past may explain you, but it does not get to govern you. Many people confuse explanation with permission. They say, "I am like this because my parents were cold. I am like this because I was rejected. I am like this because my relationship traumatized me. I am like this because no one ever supported me. I am like this because I grew up in chaos. I am like this because I was abandoned when I needed people most." That may explain part of the origin, but it does not get to rule the rest of your life. Explanation is not a sentence. Explanation is not destiny. Explanation is not a permanent license to remain weak. Your past may explain why trust is difficult for you, but it cannot force you to remain emotionally closed forever. Your early environment may explain why fear developed in you, but it cannot support an entire lifetime of avoidance. A destructive relationship may explain some of the damage, but it cannot become the permanent reason for your stagnation. At some point, explanation has to hand the microphone over to decision, because once you see the pattern, responsibility increases. Once you recognize it, you can no longer act as if you do not know. Once you identify the sabotage, you have entered the territory of correction. Once you understand the wound, you are no longer innocent in letting it rule everything without resistance. And that is exactly where many people pull back. They love the language of self-awareness, but reject the cost of correction. They love analyzing, but not interrupting. They love explaining, but not changing, because change costs comfort. It costs excuses. It costs old identities. It costs emotional attachment to the role of the wounded person. It costs the false innocence of believing that everything happening now is still entirely caused by what happened back then. Without correction, self-awareness becomes performance. The person knows how to name everything, knows how to explain everything, knows how to analyze everything, but still remains stuck, still remains undisciplined, still remains delayed, still remains weak in the places that matter most. Knowledge without responsibility becomes a hiding place, And this is especially dangerous for intelligent people, because intelligent people can build sophisticated excuses, they can create deep narratives, they can form extremely convincing explanations, they can turn their own stagnation into something that almost sounds noble, but none of that replaces action. None of that replaces healthy repetition. None of that replaces a disciplined mind. None of that replaces an aligned routine. None of that replaces the daily act of taking ownership of your life. A moment comes when you must stop asking only why the wound exists and start asking what discipline will be required so that it no longer controls your outcomes. That is maturity. That is strength. That is self-responsibility. Prosperity begins when excuses lose their emotional value. No one truly prospers while remaining emotionally loyal to their excuses. Because prosperity is not just money, it is mental order. It is emotional steadiness. It is spiritual clarity. It is inner coherence. It is outer discipline. It is the ability to sustain good decisions repeatedly. And excuses produce the opposite. They produce disorder. They produce delay. They produce inconsistency. They produce fragility. They produce escape. Prosperity requires consistency. Blame destroys consistency. Prosperity requires self-control. Victimhood weakens self-control. Prosperity requires truth. Excuses distort truth. That is why some people ask for abundance while protecting the very habits that sabotage everything they receive. They pray for open doors while keeping a defeated mind. They want peace, but keep feeding resentment. They want progress, but reject routine. They want a new life, but remain committed to the same language, the same vices, the same disorder, the same pattern of escape. You cannot build a prosperous life with an impotent mindset. It does not matter how much potential you have. It does not matter how deep you sound. It does not matter how painful your story has been. Prosperity responds to responsibility, not perfection. Responsibility. A responsible person becomes trustworthy with more. They adjust, they learn, they correct. They act, they do not waste years arguing with reality. They face reality and begin building anyway. That is why self-responsibility is not punishment. It is qualification. Life entrusts more to the person who stops spending energy proving why they are stuck and starts using that energy to transform what can still be influenced. And there is always something that can be influenced. Your routine, your speech, your focus, your habits, your environment, your time, your influences, your level of discipline, your way of reacting, your next decision. Maybe you cannot control everything, but you can control enough to begin. And beginning matters far more than dramatizing what is still outside your reach. One act of responsibility has more power than hours of emotional explanation. Waking up earlier can change a trajectory. Stopping exposure to the same negative influences can change a trajectory. Cutting out defeated language can change a trajectory. Keeping one promise you made to yourself every day can change a trajectory. Finishing what you started can change a trajectory. Taking care of your body can change your mind. Organizing your routine can organize your thinking. Reducing distractions can restore clarity. Choosing silence instead of drama can restore strength. It may sound small, but it is not. A life falls apart through small tolerated patterns, and it is rebuilt by interrupting those same patterns. Self-pity looks deep, but discipline goes deeper. Many people confuse emotional intensity with real transformation. They feel deeply. They think deeply. They talk at length about what they have gone through. They are easily moved. They recognize themselves as deep because they feel everything intensely, but they do not correct themselves consistently and without correction. Emotion becomes smoke. It can fill the room. It can even look powerful, but it cannot support structure. Discipline supports structure. Discipline is not always beautiful. It is not always exciting. It is not always emotionally moving. Many times it is quiet, repetitive, and lacking glamour. Sometimes discipline is getting up when you do not want to. Sometimes it is doing what you have kept postponing. Sometimes it is refusing to repeat the same painful story for the 10th time. Sometimes it is interrupting a destructive thought before it becomes behavior. Sometimes it is staying steady with no applause. That is where change happens. Not when you describe your pain perfectly, but when you stop allowing that pain to keep interrupting what still needs to be done. Self-pity gives the feeling of depth. Discipline creates real depth. Self-pity keeps you absorbed in yourself. Discipline builds a new structure. Self-pity may create sympathy. Discipline creates transformation. While self-pity asks to be felt, discipline asks to be obeyed. One keeps you emotionally busy. The other makes you dangerous to stagnation. That is why some people never prosper, even though they are emotionally aware. They live in endless inner processing, but not in real correction. They know how to explain the pain, but they do not know how to govern their routine. They understand their triggers, but they do not interrupt their habits. They recognize their limitations, but they keep cooperating with them. That distance destroys potential, because talent cannot compensate for a lack of self-government. Desire cannot defeat weak habits for very long. Intention cannot replace execution. Awareness cannot replace discipline. At some point, life reveals what you truly serve, and many people are serving their emotions more faithfully than they serve their future. Blame keeps you emotionally immature. There is a way to grow older without growing up. A person gains years, but not posture, collects experiences but not responsibility, lives through many things yet remains emotionally dependent on outside explanations. That is immaturity, and immaturity does not simply mean feeling too much. Immaturity is refusing responsibility and still expecting mature results. It is wanting change without correction. It is wanting progress without discipline. It is wanting a strong life while maintaining a weak posture. Blame is one of the clearest signs of that immaturity, because blame keeps a person mentally dependent on outside factors. It keeps the mind reactive. It keeps life tied to events and people who should no longer have that much authority. Blame says my life is still being shaped mainly by what other people did to me. Responsibility says what happened mattered, but what I do now matters more. Only one of those positions creates momentum. Only one restores autonomy. Only one strengthens identity. Only one produces prosperity. The emotionally immature person keeps asking who caused the pain. The mentally mature person begins asking what their standards now require. That difference changes everything, because when you become serious about your standards, your life begins to reorganize. You stop tolerating weak routines. You stop feeding defeated thoughts. You stop romanticizing your brokenness. You stop staying in environments that poison your mind. You stop accepting habits that contradict the future you say you want. You stop presenting yourself to the world like someone already defeated before the battle even begins. That is maturity. Not just paying bills, not just getting older, but taking government over your own mind, because whoever does not govern their own mind will be governed by mood trigger, impulse, fear, neediness, distraction, and memory. And that is not freedom. Freedom is not doing everything you feel like doing. Freedom is no longer being ruled by what weakens you. The language you use is shaping the person you become. Listen carefully to the way you speak, because a large part of your life is already being built inside the words you keep repeating. The person stuck in blame sounds like this: it is hard for me because of what happened. That is just how I am. You do not understand everything I have been through. After all that, I just cannot anymore. My past left me this way. That is why I never move forward. Now listen to the language of someone beginning to take responsibility. This hurt me, but I will not stay here. I need to correct my patterns. I need to stop feeding this mindset. I need to become more disciplined. I cannot keep cooperating with this weakness. My past explains a lot, but it will not define my future. I have a lot to rebuild, and the responsibility is mine. That is more than speech. That is posture. Your language reinforces identity, and identity reinforces behavior. If you speak every day like a defeated person, your mind will cooperate with that vision. If you speak like someone permanently broken, your behavior will eventually align with that narrative. If you keep telling yourself that you are stuck, blocked behind, or too traumatized to act, you will begin acting in agreement with that script. The mind follows repeated language. That is why what you say about your life matters so much. Not because words alone create miracles, but because words feed posture, and posture feeds habit, and habit feeds results. A victim mindset is often sustained by victim language, and a strong mindset begins to form when language changes. That may sound simple, but it is not shallow. Changing your language is not pretending. It is repositioning yourself. It is refusing to verbally reinforce what is already weakening you internally. You do not dishonor your pain by moving forward. Many people remain stuck because deep down moving forward feels like betrayal. As if healing means minimizing what happened. As if getting stronger means pretending it did not hurt. As if taking responsibility means excusing the people who wounded you. But none of that is true. You do not dishonor your pain by refusing to live under its rule. You do not betray the past by building a strong future. You do not invalidate your wounds by becoming disciplined enough to stop bleeding into every area of your life. In fact, one of the most honorable things a person can do after suffering is refuse to let that pain keep reproducing itself through them. Refuse to let pain become personality. Refuse to let betrayal become worldview. Refuse to let rejection become identity. Refuse to let scarcity become a permanent mental standard. That is not denial. That is power, because real healing does not always look soft. Sometimes it looks like firmness. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like routine. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like closing a chapter without ever receiving the explanation you wanted. In this matters, many people remain trapped because they are still waiting for something from the people who hurt them. An apology, validation, recognition, an admission, some kind of emotional repair. Maybe it will come, maybe it never will, but your future cannot remain suspended while you wait for that. Do not hand your tomorrow to the people who already mishandled your yesterday. Take it back. Take back your mind. Take back your direction. Take back your routine. Take back your standards. Take back your mornings. Take back your energy. Take back your attention. Let other people remain who they choose to be, but do not allow their limitations to keep writing your life. The price of comfort is often the destruction of potential comfort. Is not always peace. Sometimes it is just decorated stagnation. Comfort may be hiding inside your excuses. It may be hiding inside your disordered routine. It may be hiding inside friendships that reinforce your weakness. It may be hiding inside the story you keep telling yourself about why you still have not changed. And the longer a person remains comfortable inside their dysfunction, the more normal self-sabotage begins to feel. That is how potential dies in silence. Usually not through massive disasters, but through small daily tolerances. One more day of postponing, one more week of blaming, one more month of explaining, one more year emotionally attached to the same chapter, one more cycle waiting to feel ready. That is how dreams rot. Not because the person never wanted more, but because they remained emotionally attached to the comfort that prevents more. And one of the most dangerous forms of comfort is excuse-based living, because excuses protect you from the discomfort of trying. They protect you from the embarrassment of failing. They protect you from confronting your own inconsistency. They protect you from the pain of growth. But what protects you can also imprison you. A seed is protected inside its shell, but if it never breaks that shell, it never becomes a tree. You may feel protected inside your explanations, but if they are never broken, you will never become who you could have been either. At some point, growth requires rupture. Rupture with old language. Rupture with old posture. Rupture with passive identity. Rupture with the addiction to explaining instead of executing. Rupture with emotional loyalty to pain. That rupture is uncomfortable, but it is sacred, because on the other side of it, is a stronger version of you. What self-responsibility looks like in practice. Self-responsibility is not self-hatred. It is not blaming yourself for everything. It is not acting as if every wound was your fault. It is not becoming cold. It is not pretending you feel nothing. Self-responsibility is something cleaner and stronger than that. It is looking at your life and saying, I will not lie to myself anymore. I will not keep using my pain as permission to abandon myself. I will not spend years explaining what I should be correcting. I will not let the past keep ruling my behavior. I will not keep calling procrastination a process. I will not keep calling fear caution. I will not keep calling self-sabotage honesty. That is self-responsibility. In practice, it may look quiet. It may look ordinary. It may look simple, but its effects are enormous. It may look like waking up earlier because you realized your mind needs order from the first hours of the day. It may look like cutting contact with influences that feed negativity, drama, and scarcity. It may look like stopping the constant retelling of your old story and beginning to build a new one in silence. It may look like organizing your environment because a disordered environment feeds a disordered mind. It may look like keeping small promises you made to yourself, even when no one is watching. It may look like seeking help without turning that help into dependence. It may look like admitting that you have been delaying for far too long. It may look like saying no to the behavior that comforts you today and weakens you tomorrow. It may look like choosing discipline over drama. It may look like becoming less interesting to people who are addicted to chaos. It may look like routine, like prayer, like study, like boundaries, like focused work, like silence, like consistency. That may not impress many people at first, but it produces impressive results over time, because self-responsibility restores order, and where there is order, there is clarity. Where there is clarity, there is strength. Where there is strength, there is consistency. Where there is consistency, prosperity becomes possible. The hardest truth? Part of your current suffering is now self-inflicted. This is the part many people do not want to hear. Not all the suffering that exists in your life today is still being produced by the original wound. Part of it is being produced by the way you keep responding to that wound. Part of it is being fed by habits, part by language, part by avoidance, part by procrastination, part by resistance to responsibility, part by attachment to the identity of the wounded person. That does not mean the original pain was your fault. It means the continuation of certain patterns has now become your responsibility. And that distinction changes everything, because it is easier to say, I am still like this because of what was done to me, than to admit I am also still suffering because I have not seriously corrected what that pain created in me. But transformation begins in that second sentence. That is where you stop being only a container for damage and start becoming a builder of a new pattern. Without that moment, the cycle continues. You keep attracting what matches your inner disorder. You keep choosing what matches your untreated neediness. You keep postponing what demands maturity. You keep living below your potential while insisting that your intentions are good. But intention is not enough. You can want change and still cooperate with what prevents it. You can desire prosperity and still protect the mindset that creates scarcity. You can want peace and still feed the reactions that destroy your peace. That is why self-responsibility is non-negotiable. It brings the focus back to the right place, not to what you cannot rewrite, but to what you are now responsible for rebuilding. Your future is watching what you tolerate today. Every time you tolerate a weak pattern, you are casting a vote for a weaker future. Every time you repeat defeated language, you reinforce a defeated identity. Every time you delay a hard action, you train yourself to trust comfort more than calling your life is not shaped only by dramatic moments. It is shaped by repeated tolerances. So look honestly at your reality. What are you tolerating in your mind? What are you tolerating in your speech? What are you tolerating in your routine? What are you tolerating in your relationships? What are you tolerating in your discipline? What are you tolerating in the way you react? What are you tolerating in the way you manage your time? Because what you tolerate today may look like destiny tomorrow, and many people call it destiny when it was really accumulated tolerance. That is why transformation begins with refusal. Refusal to keep speaking like someone already defeated. Refusal to keep feeding thoughts that weaken you. Refusal to keep handing authority to the past. Refusal to keep treating excuses like emotional property. That refusal is powerful because it is the first sign of mental separation between you and what has been destroying your strength. From there, a new life becomes possible. Maybe not instantly, maybe. Not perfectly, but truly, and everything true begins with truth. Final call, listen to this carefully. You can spend the rest of your life explaining your paralysis, explaining why you are behind, explaining why you're stuck, explaining why you never started, explaining why you gave up, explaining why you got lost, explaining why your mind stays tired, explaining why your life never really rises. Or you can do something far more powerful. You can decide that the explanation has gone far enough, that the mourning has gone far enough, that the attachment to the old identity has gone far enough, that the blame has gone far enough, that the delay has gone far enough, and today you can begin differently. Not because your past was light, but because your future is too valuable to keep sacrificing on the altar of what already happened. No one can think for you. No one can think for you. No one can discipline themselves for you. No one can interrupt your patterns for you. No one can mature your mind for you. No one can recover the years you keep handing over to excuses. That decision is yours, and that is not bad news. It is the best possible news, because if the excuse is no longer in control, then your power is available again. If blame no longer rules your identity, then your future can finally breathe. If pain is no longer sitting on the throne, then your discipline can rise. And when discipline rises, life changes, slowly at first, quietly at first, without applause at first, without recognition at first, but it changes your posture. Changes. Your language changes. Your focus changes, your routine changes, your strength changes, your clarity changes. Your confidence changes. Your results change. Your life changes, all because you stopped asking whose fault is this and started asking, what is my responsibility now? That is the question strong people answer differently. That is the question mature people answer differently. That is the question prosperous people answer differently. They do not spend all their energy building a courtroom around the past. They use that energy to build a future that no longer bows to it. So let this be the day you stop negotiating with your excuses, the day you stop worshiping your wounds, the day you stop handing your power to people who are no longer even in the room, the day you stop calling self-sabotage honesty, the day you stop waiting for someone else to carry what only you can carry. Take responsibility for your mind. Take responsibility for your speech. Take responsibility for your habits. Take responsibility for your healing. Take responsibility for your standards. Take responsibility for your future. Because the greatest secret of a success mindset is not talent. It is not look. It is not background. It is not perfect conditions. It is not having had an easy life. It is not never being wounded. It is this, the moment you take full responsibility for your life, your power returns. And when your power returns, everything can begin to change. If this message spoke to you, write in the comments, I take full responsibility for my future. And if you have decided to stop feeding excuses, stop living under the shadow of pain, and stop giving the past more power, then your purpose stay here, because this is exactly where a stronger life begins.